I got on the Midway in August of 1976. Was on here for 3 years in a squadron called VA 56. Now, you look up here, you see it says VF 161. Every squadron on here has some type of a V in front of it. We were VA for attack. We were a bombing squadron. This is the hangar bay, and obviously, kind of big. But whenever airplanes had to be maintained, they would bring them down here to the hangar bay, and they would fix them down here. You say, gee, a lot of room. When we were at sea, you could barely walk in here because the airplanes parked side by side, front to back. You have to work your way all the way to the other end of the ship if you want to use this as a pass. This ship was stationed in Yokosuka, Japan. So I went to Japan. I spent about 5 years over there. I never spent more than 21 days in a row in Japan. The rest of the time we were at sea, and we went to a number of different ports. Where all the glass is, there's a bridge up there. In fact, there's two of them. One was the Admiral's Bridge, whenever we had an admiral on board. The other was the captain who ran the ship. So we navigated the ship from there, and that was a nerve center for anything that was going on. Another space up in the island is called Fly, or Primary Flight Control. And that's where the air boss lived, or worked. The air boss was the guy that looked over the flight deck and was responsible for all the flight operations, much like a control tower at an airport. Okay, he was the one guy that was responsible for everything on the ground or on the deck and everything in the air within basically 3 miles of the ship. There are arresting gear cables that go across the deck. This is a little bit different than most ships. This only has 3 cables. Most of the decks have 4 cables. Okay? The reason this only had 3 is because they didn't have enough room to put a 4th one in. So the way that those cables work, they would string across the deck, and they would be connected to arresting gear engines that were down below the flight engines turning. You have airplanes moving around that have things hung on them, ordnance. These are all drop tanks, or refueling tanks that we would put extra fuel in or hung onto the airplane. So all sorts of things are going on out there, and very dangerous operation, but once again, very choreographed. When everything went very well, which it does 99% of the time, everything is just smooth as glass. Okay, so 1 potato, 2 potato, boom, like that. That's how long it takes you to get off the front end. Okay. Mechanically, the way it worked is that we would pull up to the catapult track. The jet would drop a launch bar. Okay, launch bar. Launch bar. It drops down. It's usually on the nose gear. Okay, you'll see it. We'll show you one when we get upstairs. And that launch bar would get hooked into a shuttle that is on the catapult. Okay. Now, the other thing is that behind that launch bar, they would hook up what's called a holdback fitting. So I have a launch bar trying to pull me. I have a holdback fitting that's holding me back. So I'd pull onto the catapult when I was ready to go. So I'd run my engines up to full power. I would wipe out the cockpit with my control stick, so they look at all my flight control services to make sure everything moved the way it's supposed to move. They would look to make sure I had no hydraulic leaks or fuel leaks or any type of leaks. They would give one last look to make sure that the airplane was ready to go flying. And I would be doing the same thing in the cockpit. I'd look at all my gauges. I'm full power, wiping the stick out, looking at all the gauges, make sure my engines are doing what they're supposed to do. When everything's good to go, okay, I would look up, I would see the guy that's on the deck, and I would salute him. Okay? Now my salute was a little different. Instead of doing a standard salute, I would do this, okay, which means, send me that one, boys, okay? But when they saw me touch my helmet, okay, they would clear the deck, make sure nobody was down the catapult track so that I couldn't hit anything, and then a guy would touch the deck, and a guy on the edge of the deck would hit a button, and boom, the catapult would fire, okay? So now I'm going down the deck. Now here's a scary thing. Not so scary when you do it, but the scary thing is I never have my hand on the stick, okay, going down the catapult, okay. I would put my hand right here, and the stick would just come back, and once it came back and hit my hand, I'd just grab it, and I'd start flying, okay. It was basically hands-off. I had to keep the power up, okay, but you never held on to the stick, because what would happen is that, especially with the F-18, which is the second airplane I flew on here, it had flight control computers. And if I started messing with it going down a catapult track, as soon as I got airborne, the airplane wouldn't know what to do. Right here, you can kind of see it sticking out. This is a 20-millimeter Gatling gun. Okay, that A6 up here on the catapult. We'll walk up there. They were bombers also, and they gave us fuel in the air. And then the E2 with the big dome on the top, that was our radar, our airborne radar control gun. I said, if everybody else is going, I'm going. So started my engine up, put the canopy down, got the heater going. It's nice and warm in here. The guys on the flight deck are really freezing because it's snowing. And they were listening to the helo, and we can't really see them because it's worse than this. And I need you to give me a space to land. So we had an emergency pull forward. The boss said, okay, all you guys that are already started up in your jets, we're going to cancel the launch. So if you look, if you can kind of see on the other side of the fence, see that little low white railing there? That's a scupper. Behind that scupper, they run pipes and stuff for fire control and things like that. So I'm sliding left, and I'm thinking, if I go over the edge, okay, I'm going to have to eject. And I'm looking out, and it's gray out there. The water's cold. The water's about 40 degrees. To stay in that water at 40 degrees, you'll probably have about maybe 10 to 20 minutes of useful consciousness before you just freeze up. Okay? So I'm saying, this isn't going to be pretty. If I do that, the helo's coming into land. What are they going to do? Because his blades, nobody's going to come and get me. But if I have to eject, I will. So I continue to slide. I had my hand on my ejection handle down between my legs, and I went up. I hit the scupper with my left main mount, it up the deck. But the land signal officers were here. Our landing aid, which was what I talked to you about before, the two rows of lights with the one in between. Okay, that's what we call the mirror or the meatball. That's up the deck here on the left side someplace. I didn't see it when we walked back here. We can't see it because of the airplanes. But it's not ship. The carrier would probably get 20 or 30 movies, and then we'd have to go check one out, and we'd show it, and then we'd swap it with somebody else and watch another one. And I want to tell you what, you don't know how many bad movies there are out there. But one of the favorite ones was Young Frankenstein. Okay, so this is back in '76 when I got here, and he walks by all these guys, and he goes right to the front of the line. So TL, he's in line with everybody. He goes, "Hey, in the line." And Tom Cruise looks back and says, "Do you know who I am?" He goes, "Yeah, you're Tom Cruise, in the line." And Cruise tucked his tail between his legs. He got back in the end of the line and figured out, hey, you know what? I'm not some hotshot actor. I'm on an active duty US Navy aircraft carrier, and these guys are the guys that own this place out here, so I better shut up and get along. EMZ. Between North, okay. And what happened is that we had a couple of Army guys who went out and chopped down trees so they could see the Korean outpost, but the Koreans killed two of our guys. We went on alert. The whole South Korean peninsula went on alert, and the North Koreans kept their heads down because we were off the coast flying, okay, just following around. I didn't get all the fun because I had about 4 other guys out there with me that said, hey, let me have some fun. So I'd pull off, the next guy'd roll in behind them and chase them around. And finally the Russians went, hey, they just went home. They said we weren't going to do anything to them, and they weren't going to do anything to us, but they realized that we had basically kind of upset them a little bit because we got into their airspace without them knowing.